partnership with the city of St. Petersburg, particularly the Housing and Community Development Department, to establish a grassroots community coalition that we call Healthy Homes Community Coalition. I always keep the asterisk over the homes because post-recovery from our recent storms, the definition of home and the way people think about that is sometimes different. So if that word triggers something, know that we say it in love and you can substitute it for whatever it is. And our work really is about the overall idea of people having the right to live in a home that supports their health. And we're starting out with a specific focus on that. And so that's where we're going to jump in today. So I want to do a couple just sort of rounding and opening things. You will see that we reserve trees for, did you have a question? Okay. So I sent you the agenda, but we did not print it out, but not to worry, I'm going to give you the landscape. So today we're really focusing on two things: deepening our understanding about living access, as I just mentioned, and then we're going to jump into the real work that we're trying to accomplish in this next few months, which is to help develop a strategic plan. The desired outcomes for today include to have an understanding of lead poisoning, the Department of Health response and prevention recommendations, to have a shared understanding of reporting requirements and risk assessment processes. You'll learn more about both of those things. An opportunity to discuss and explore resources available to address the response to lead hazards. So that's a conversation that we can all take part in. Also, an opportunity to identify activities and tasks to accomplish identified strategies, i.e. work with strategic planning. And as always, we also want to lead with some next steps and recommendations. This is the agenda for today. I'm currently in the opening and rounding phase. We'll move into the presentation and then a little bit of group discussion. Once we finish the group discussion, and by that time lunch will be here, as normal, we will have a working lunch, so we'll encourage you to grab one of your lunches, and then we're going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek on what we're doing post-lunch. Post-lunch is really where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the work, the strategic plan by getting into work groups. Most of you have already responded prior to today's meeting about which work group you want to respond. Thank you, Ms. Kaiser Robson, for your interest. So we'll divide up into that and then have some discussion. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get there, because we have something for you to refer to as part of that. And then we'll wrap it up. My goal is that by the end of today, we will have a schedule of, we'll set a schedule for how we want to meet from now through June. I've got a couple of ideas to run by you and see hopefully how you feel about it. I do want to remind us of our agreements because it's how we like to engage. But I encourage you to please listen actively, speak from your own perspective, participate to the fullest of your ability, assume positive intent. That's how if someone says something and it kind of rubs you the wrong way, believe that they meant it positively. But you can ask them about it. Like, hey, did you know this? Maybe sometimes you just don't realize they say things that rub you the wrong way. Always step up and step back. So if you're normally one of the people who are the first to speak, like I am, I'm going to encourage you to step back. If you're generally a little more quiet, like Lane is, I'm going to ask you to step up. Everybody in the room, so you know everybody will get called. Be open to ideas and contributions. What happens here will stay here. I don't think that we really talk about confidential stuff, but in the case it does, something comes up, keep it here. And then finally, challenge ideas and not people. We actually added one, which is permission to be raggedy.
Yes.
If you need to say something and you can't figure out the exact words, this is a safe space to say it how you want to say it, and we can figure it out. Okay. So encourage you to just be your authentic self, because that's what makes the most difference. Now, one other thing I just want to do, and thank you, Brother John Hunter, for reminding me about this. For those of you who are just getting oriented to the process, let me tell you first, welcome. Oh, I forgot to say, first time. So the first time in the room, I'm looking because I know Stacey is. I'm looking at first time. Yes, sir. Raise your hand. Mr. Flake. Is that Mr. Flake?
It ain't, but
Mr. Jackson, good morning. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time here, I just want to orient you to where we are, where we've been, and where we're going. So we started talking about the coalition in late December, actually in early December. Wow, that was a long time ago. When we met again in January and started talking about what could this coalition look like and how should we structure it to be effective. Our next sort of destination is to finish developing the coalition strategic plan. Our goal is to do that by June. I'll talk more about it. Then we want to spend some time executing and monitoring that plan. And then we want to be able to help launch the pilot labor mediation mini grant program that we spoke a little bit about last month, but as we get closer to that, we'll say more about it. And then once we've done those things, there'll be an opportunity to talk about what happens to the future of the coalition and how we want to move forward as a group. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Make sense?
Absolutely.
All right. Then, without further ado, it is my pleasure to bring up Becky and Michelle to give us everything we need to know about lead hazards. And with that, ladies, do we need to do introductions? I'm sorry. I just jumped in because I hate to Becky and Michelle do introductions, but can we just go around and do tables so everybody knows everybody?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacey Dean. I'm community partnership specialist with Impact Health. But good morning, ladies, here in Petersburg. I am Christina Dyke, and I'm a realtor. So I help people find some homes and try to keep them safe enough. Thank you, Christina. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Christina Dyke. Program manager, and I'm so glad to see you here today. I'm looking for the house here in the I'm Stephanie Palmer. I am a family member of OP, One Nation, One Tribe. We consult with We partner with organizations and companies in St. Petersburg, and I also was a district administrator for 17 years for Canal County Schools before I was kind of shown the door because my job was diversity, equity, and
Yeah.
we need to talk.
We really do. We really do.
Thank you for being here. Tasha.
My name is Tasha Pullman, and I'm the clinical program manager for the Hub St. Pete. We're a community support space that connects residents with services in the area.
All right, my name is Antonio.
Yeah.
Ms. Aisha Robinson, the managing officer.
Hi, I'm Joyce Robinson. I'm case manager too for Health Opportunity Council.
Good morning, Michelle.
All right, James Robinson. Part of the urban league, like.
Oh, well, we definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for being here. Oh, yeah, we definitely. We are. Chris.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead, Elaine.
Good morning, my name is Elaine Chambliss-Dogan. I'm contracted with the policy partners, and also I'm a small business owner. I am an artist, and let me try.
Community activists and all kind of stuff.
Oh, and community activists, philanthropists, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Brother John Muhammad, co-director of Policy Partners, and I'm an Aries too.
Right there, we can get you.
Yeah.
Do everything.
Yeah. You see what I did, right? Yeah. Just Google it. If you're wondering.
I need Aries in my life.
Yeah.
Yes. Ladies, thank you. We're ready for you.
Okay, well, hi, everybody. My name is Michelle. My colleague from the Florida Department of Health in Pinellas County. We work in the epidemiology program. So we just wanted to give you a little bit of overview on what we do when we receive a report of an elevated lead level case.
the language is kind of changing, sometimes referred to as lead poisoning, but we're kind of moving away to elevated lead levels.
Oh, so you prefer us to use elevated lead levels over lead poisoning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, CDC kind of changing their language as well, like she said, because sometimes you hear parents or maybe, get reports from their pediatrician saying your child has lead poisoning, that's, they're like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? So that may not be the case, we're just talking about like the elevated lead levels. So kind of what I wanted to share with you guys today, and our goal is just to give everybody an understanding of our role and scope of the health department and kind of what we do and follow up on these cases. Because I think we learned it last time too, not everybody knows what everybody else does, so we just let you know what we are able to offer and see how we can partner with everybody else here to kind of carry out our mission.
Okay, so I'll get started and give you guys a little bit of background about childhood lead poisoning. There are no safe levels of lead in the blood. Any small amount, even low levels, can cause developmental delays, learning difficulty, and behavioral issues in children. So there are no safe levels. The way that lead is transmitted is mostly through inhalation of lead dust. So kids are crawling around on the floor in their homes. They pick up that dust on their hands. They put their hands in their mouth, things like that. Some of the common sources we see of lead is chipping and peeling paint in homes built before 1978, which is a big thing that we're targeting here. Water and lead pipes. Lead can be in the soil, in the environment. We also see it a lot in consumer products, like imported candies, imported toys, jewelry. We all like to shop on Amazon or Temu or whatever the thing is. A lot of times there's recalls in these products. There can also be take-home exposures if an adult has an occupation or a hobby. They work in construction and they like to go to the target shooting range. They can bring home lead dust and on their clothes, on themselves, and bring it in and pass it to the children in the home. So we're going to go over those in more detail and give you some more specific examples of exposures, but those are kind of the common ones we see. In terms of reporting requirements, so the CDC updated their lead reference value in 2021. It used to be 5 micrograms per deciliter. They updated it to 3.5 micrograms per deciliter. So this represents, I think it's like the 97th percentile of children with elevated lead levels. So this is a small amount of children, but it's still affecting them. And this represents, these children with these levels are higher than the rest of the population. And so providers are required to report based on these new guidelines.
So what was the reason that they reduced the reference value from 5 to 3.5? They found out?
So they also, even before Michelle's time here, when I started health department, I've been here 9 years, it was 10. And then it dropped to 5. So now it's 3.5.
So they realized
to lower the threshold so that we're not waiting until somebody says it's
Okay.
provide education and recommendations to lessen those before it gets to them.
Okay, so at this level, then you all can be activated to actually do proactive stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's actually kind of touching that because that's now the provider, the level that the provider is going to have to notify us about is 3.5.
Ah, okay.
So, yes, so the reporting requirements to the local health departments, all providers and laboratories are required to report 3.5 and above per this chapter, of the disease code. So, this Florida statute. So we get reports from providers, pediatricians, health departments, urgent cares, and they're required to report electronically or fax by the next day. So if a laboratory like Quest LabCorp is running these tests, they report it electronically to us automatically.
Oh, wow.
And this is our reporting, our reportable diseases in Florida. That's that form. There's a lot of interesting stuff on there too.
I don't know if they've updated the form. It says technically, it still may be listed as 5, but by CDC's recommendations, they now have to report at the lower level of 3.5. So if you do publish the actual form, there's a lot of things that have to happen before they can change this whole document. So just know that it does say 5, but providers do know they have to report at
Okay, and all providers, no matter where they, even like CVS and the minute clinics, would
So
they?
they are not typically a place that does blood testing.
Oh,
But
okay.
we'll see it like a pediatrician's office.
Okay.
And also too, for any of these reporting requirements, any of these reportable diseases, providers have an obligation to report. They are required to report to the health department and also the lab. So sometimes we have, records say, oh, well, I thought the lab told me, but I didn't tell you. And it's like, no, you also have to.
Okay.
You know, you are responsible for reporting to us because sometimes we need both sides of the information. We need the clinical information about the patient, but then we also need the lab results. So.
And the updated guidelines are on our website, even though they're not on this form.
Okay.
So a little bit more information, the American Academy of Pediatrics, their periodicity schedule, so they recommend a risk assessment at well visits for children at these ages. So it's quite often. So that's just the initial risk assessment. If the risk assessment identifies a possible lead exposure, then they'll do the blood test at the pediatrician's office. So the American Academy of Pediatrics also recommends that we screen all children who are recent immigrants, refugees, or adoptees. If they're coming in from another country, it's even more likely that they have a lead exposure because it's just a lot more prevalent in the environment and in other countries. Also, Medicaid requires a blood level test at 12-month and 24-month blood visits. So Medicaid, providers are doing that automatically. The testing, so there's two types of testing. There's a capillary sample, and that's going to be that initial screening tool. And it's going to be a finger prick in your finger or in the heel for the little itty bitty babies. So this is, like I said, a good screening tool, but it can be prone to contamination and possible false positives. Contamination from lead on your skin, surface dust, or like the calibration of the machine. If you have a point of care machine, that's a rapid test. Those machines can be a little off. So it's a good screening tool. That's where we start with kids. But then if they do come back positive on that initial capillary sample, we recommend that they get a venous sample drawn. So an actual blood draw from the vein. And that's going to be the most accurate and give us exactly what the level is of blood. So, in part of our investigation, we'll go through that process now. Step one, when the county health department is notified of a lab result, what we do is we call the provider, we get the medical records, the visit notes, see if there's anything exposure in those records, and provide recommendations on when they should follow up with a confirmatory venous sample. So that has a specific timeline as well, depending on their level. The higher the level, the more urgent it is that we get a venous sample drawn, so we can confirm, is this real, is this a false positive, and follow up with the right protocol.
And the venous draw should happen at the same location that the initial assessment happened at?
A lot of times the pediatricians will give a referral to go to Quest to a lab for to get that done. Because a lot of times we don't do it in-house.
Okay.
In the doctor's office.
So you don't actually have to do another medical visit in order to follow up?
Right, yeah, but they do have to go to a lab.
Uh,
If you consider that a medical visit, they are getting a blood draw.
Yeah.
Quest or lab for, which can be a little bit of a process
Mhm.
with kids. So that's the timeline that we recommend. So 3.5 to 9, within 3 months, we want them to get a venous draw. 10 to 20 within a month. And so on. So it can be pretty quick. If it's a super high level, we want it done as quick as possible, within 48 hours.
And I'll add to that, certainly if it's like really high, and really high, very subjective, but especially if we see something like over 10, over 15, we want to make sure that it's done. What I've seen just from experience, and especially things like on that lower level, if it's like, 5 or something like that, we have a lot of issues with compliance and parents not wanting to like jump right into having, their child going for blood draw and have a traumatic experience, So sometimes what we see is that the parent will decline that, and maybe they'll just check it at the next well visit, and if it's still high by that screening tool, sometimes then parents are a little bit more, willing to do that, that venous sample to confirm one way or the other. So just know that not everybody follows this 100%. We've certainly encouraged the providers to talk to the parents about it. We try to talk to the parents about it, but it may not always happen that they follow through with the confirmatory testing.
That's a good place for the infrastructure team to be thinking.
What you said, but do you all, did I miss that? Do you all communicate with the families of these children?
Yeah, no, you're good. So, yes, initially what happens, like in that step one, is just that we're notified about an elevated blood test. So from there, outside of that, we don't have any further information. So typically what we'll do, next step is we will contact, the pediatrician, whatever doctor's office they were seen at, to get demographic information, make sure we have parent name, phone number, address, a little bit of history to see if maybe the doctors have gone through. I've seen sometimes pediatric offices will have like their own little risk assessment to say, does this child live in an older home, or they live in other countries. So it has like some basic information that's in there. It may not, so we'll look at that to see what's already been discussed. When we talk to the patient, so if we have limited information, we will certainly always, reach out to the parent to kind of collect a full history, because with any of our reportable diseases, the doctors are meant to kind of test and treat that patient. For public health, we're looking at prevention. So I always tell people, we're going to talk to you about things, kind of aside from what the doctors cover, to go into more depth, find out what the exposures are, provide recommendations, answer any questions that you may have to kind of support, that follow-up with healthcare provider. So with that being said, maybe we have somebody that was tested at their pediatrician's office, here's their current address, but when we call them, they say, oh, I just, moved in there a month ago. So their exposure may have been from somewhere else and not that home. So we want to get a full thorough history of, where this child has lived, especially. Normally, if you don't have a huge extensive history, they're tested, very early on in life. We want to find out if they have any history of blood testing. So let's say I've seen situations where we have a 1-year-old that goes in for a well visit, it's negative, and then, so we don't hear about it because it's negative, not reportable, it's negative. But then they go for their 2-year well visit, and now it's at a 6. Oh, wow. So that's, we're like, okay, so let's figure out what's going on. So we'll find out if they've been tested in the past, because then that can narrow down our window of when we're looking at when they may have been exposed. We've had situations where, like, for whatever reason, it was missed at their 1-year-old visit, and this is the first one we have, and that's all we can go off of. But then again, that gives us like a little bit more indication of where we need to focus our investigation. And also, too, part of that can just be behavioral changes. Infants not spending much time on the floor. They're super little. As they get, more mobile, walking, crawling, they're spending more time on the floor. So sometimes things like that just come with changes in their behavior. We want to assess for any exposures in the home. So especially if people live in older homes, we'll typically ask if there have been any recent renovations. We're looking for things where like paint, walls are being, demoed, things like that, where it can create the lead dust. Is there any paint chipping? Do you have any old doors or windows? I think I remember I talked to the lady, she was like, the baby's crib was right by a window, so they were like putting their hands up on the windowsill to look out, and their fingers, it's kind of like right there. So those are things I try to think of, like, is there anything that we're missing outside of just the big exposures, where the child could be exposing themselves. Yeah.
Is lead in the dirt?
Yeah. Well, I can't say for 6 feet, but in general, that's something that we assess for, lead's in the environment, unfortunately. So one thing that we do ask about is, does the child play outside? Are they like in direct contact with the dirt? We try to. Yeah, it's just because it's in the environment, and especially with little ones, they're playing in the mud, playing in the dirt, hand in my mouth, we try to encourage parents, try to keep them out of any like sand and dirt. Can you put like a blanket down or something where they're not as able to get their hands in that dirt? Try to whip their hands down as much as possible. We know they're little, you can only do so much, but little things like that, putting a towel down, putting it down, may help to minimize that too. Review for any possible secondary exposure. So this is kind of what Michelle touched on, is like take-home exposure. So, I've seen a lot of times parents will call and say, I just have the pediatrician's office, I have my child tested positive for lead, what do I do with my home? Do I have to move? And this is where we want to come in and kind of get like a full history to see if there's anything else. Because essentially, our main goal is to try to identify what the source is and then prevent it. So sometimes what we have found is that there's other people in the home that are doing, have occupations or hobbies that are exposing them to, you know, lead dust, they work with metal, whatever it may be. And then we may have to provide education. So maybe a situation where if people work in those environments, you know, make sure that you change your clothes before you even get into the car. Because especially if you have like upholstered, you know, seats in your car, that's going to build up in your car. It's going to get on the child seat in the back. You know, that's a very confined space. You know, make sure you change your shoes, especially people that work in like construction. You don't want the shoes trapped in the home. Little babies are in the home, crawling, fingers in the mouth. So you can kind of see how these things are easily transferred once you get home. So those are things I will ask about. Is anybody else working? You know, what kind of field do they work in? You know, if you work in an office setting, not as concerned. But if you're working in like a factory or, you know, plant or something like that, then that's a different situation. We want to talk about any toys, any products, any food items that the child may be consuming. So toys, we'll touch on it in a few slides here, but sometimes there are recalls for toys. We always want to ask, you know, what types of toys do you have? Where did you purchase them from? So sometimes people have like hand-me-down toys from when they were little, and now they pass it on to their child. They may be old, paint chipping. I know just in my experience doing assessments in people's home, the expert that we had in the health department, he said like especially red paint seems to be higher in lead just because it helps to like, maintain the brightness of the color. So looking for like, I always think like old like trains or little cars, things like that. You know, I try to ask if they're using anything like that. But if they have like newer products, you know, you buy from like Target, something like that, they're plastic, you know, I'm a little less concerned. But just trying to ask about where the toys came from. You know, if there's any other products in the home that the child may come in contact with. So sometimes there may be like dishware that they're using. So I've seen people that, you know, the parents may be from another country, they bring things back, you know, it's chipped, it's cracked, especially things that have like a paint or glaze on it. I had one situation where a mom, she had like some kind of ceramic dish, and she was putting like salsa in there, so it's like acidic, and it kind of broke down the salsa, and then you just eat it, you know, and you adjust it that way because it leaches into the food. So kind of like things like that, just trying to think outside the box. Is there anything else that is in the home that you're exposing yourself to? In food items, so sometimes there are recalls for lead in the found in food items. So I don't know if you guys recall, but it's almost maybe going on 3 years ago. There was a recall. It's kind of still ongoing for those like applesauce pouches for babies that they found like lead in them. It was traced back actually to the cinnamon. So that was a big one. So if you Google it, it'll pop right up. And then I think they keep still like slowly finding other products. The cinnamon is put into many different things, but it was like specific brands of applesauce. And I think they were sold at like specific stores, like the dollar stores, things where people are going very frequently. Unfortunately, it's causing very.
And then you wonder why you ain't buying them.
Right. So once we collect all this information, you know, depending on what we identify, we want to make sure that we are providing recommendations to those parents about, you know, prevention measures. So we're going to touch on some of those in a minute. So I kind of talked about this, but take-home exposures in the home, so things that other people could be doing in the home that are exposing their children or other people in the household. And honestly, if somebody tells me like, oh, my husband works in construction, I'll be like, has he been tested for lead? This may be a good time to get his level checked, because it's not like a routine thing that's done at your physical or whatnot unless you specifically ask for it. So we want to, you know, make sure that person's aware as well. So if it's super high, they need to know where they're at and can take measures to get those levels down themselves. So things we'll try to ask people, is there anything that works in, you know, construction, demolition, renovation, obviously disrupting walls where there's paint in there. Manufacturing of products coated with lead, so working with any batteries, bullets. There's a battery manufacturing plant over in Tampa, so we have a lot of employees bringing that get reported to us from there. So if they have children at home, we always ask them about that. Any smelting, welding, so if you're heating up, you know, metals. Any recycling materials, so there's a recycling plant where we get cases from. Any casting or soldering. So we have people that will like cast their own bullets, and I've had people that use like Anytime I heard one guy tell me, he's like, you know, I'm out there fishing, and then I like put it in my mouth to hold it, and then I string the line, and then he's like sucking on this old, you know, lead weight is really not the greatest. So, you know, but these are things they don't think about, and then when we talk to them, then they're like, okay, got it, I'm not gonna do that anymore. People that go to, shooting ranges to do target practice, we see this a lot, so it may not be their occupation, but they do it for fun. So that's something where there's a lot of deaths created, especially if it's like an indoor facility. Those facilities do have precautions in place, but you know, once you leave that facility, then you have your own responsibility again. Change out of your shoes, change out of your clothes before you even get in the car. Bring a change of clothes before you get in the car.
Oh, wow.
And then bridge painting. So we do have a lot of people that get reported that do bridge painting. Like they'll actually like old like roadside bridges, they'll scrape and have to repaint them. We see a lot of this. They're actually all over the country. I didn't even know this was a huge big thing, but we have a lot of residents in Pinellas that do this as an occupation, but a lot of times they're traveling around the country, so they may not be exposed here, but we assess for that in case there's any children in the home, you know, once they come back from these long projects. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but other sources that will ask about it at home, any chipping paint. I have heard, I'm not sure this is, but I've heard it a few times that like lead paint is actually sweet, and then it's like sweet to the taste. So that's why children, if they are eaten or whatnot, they may be more prone to do it.
That's what I.
Any imported or antique toys. Sometimes we see this for people that come from another country. They'll bring, you know, their childhood stuff home. Jewelry. So I'll show you a recall in a few slides, but if you can imagine like little kind of trinket jewelry or like those dumbbell machines, like the
the little costume jewelry.
Yeah, they kind of just like this cheapo jewelry, and sometimes with little kids, especially if, like someone's wearing a necklace, little kids do this, they suck on them, they may accidentally ingest them, and can cause very high levels of ingestion. There's lead in crystalware, and also pewter dishes. So for any reason, hopefully not little kids are not picking up crystal dishware, because they're very heavy. They'll ask you about that. Any ceramic items, like I touched on before, any imported or glazed products. Stained glass can also have lead in it as well. We don't see that as often, I'll say, but it's just an exposure we ask about. And then also to imported spices. So we talked about the cinnamon. And the cinnamon from that recall from the applesauce pouches, it was from another country. And again, it was just used in products that were distributed in the US. And then we've seen too is if people are buying spices either online from another country or maybe they're traveling and bring things back, you know, we just can't guarantee how those products were prepared, what was in them. They have different standards in that country versus in the US. So that is certainly something that we've seen pop up in the past as well. And then there may be these traditional kind of remedies and things that people are using again that we may not see here in the US traditionally, but you know, if there's any like beans or dyes that are put on children, they can have high levels of lead in there as well, and it's absorbed into the skin that way. So here's a couple pictures, like in that kind of, let's see the dishware again, that's like the pottery and stuff where people are serving food. So if anything's reaching into the food and adjusting it, can get in that way. You'll see here, there's a child covering on the windowsill, so if anything gets on their hands and they're putting their fingers in their mouth, and they can get in that way. And then that bottom picture, I had an investigation. I don't know that this picture was from that, but it kind of looks similar, where this family was from another country, and the parents brought back just like for fun, like the little cup that they used when they were little, and they were drinking, but it was literally like deteriorating and metal, and now their own child was drinking from that. So one thing I recommend to parents, because sometimes we go through all these questions and there's just like nothing we can figure out. It's really tricky. So I say, you know what? If you just Google the lead recall list online, this will pop up. It's through the U.S. Consumer and Product Safety Commission. It has all different kinds of recalls, but you can filter by lead specifically. And sometimes there's like things you don't even think about. I've seen like coffee tables, I've seen like furniture that has lead in it. But these are some that we've seen that are more dangerous to children. So it may be a little bit hard to read. But on the far left, these just look like stainless steel, like travel cups. Doesn't look like it would be anything unsafe, but they were recalled for lead back in 2023. That middle one, you can kind of see this. Kind of was talking about this little like trinket jewelry thing. So there was lead found in there. You know, these things look very, you know, you just buy them them at the store, no problem, but they were all recalled for lead. And kind of same thing with the jewelry on the ring. That was actually from just January of this year. So those are just some examples, but I always encourage parents, jump on that website, see if there's anything that we're just not thinking of that's on there. So lastly, we always want to leave our parents and children with education materials and recommendations, what they can do to lower their levels. So these are examples of things that we'll mail to them. So we get them education over the phone. We'll follow with some written materials that we can reference, look at once we hang up. I think these are all found on our website too. So if you ever need to find them, they're there. But these are kind of examples of things. So there's kind of like a what can I do with some basics, wash your hands, clean your home, some healthy food items that we can recommend for the children, and then talk to your doctor. It's just like a really nice one pager. It kind of just hits on different things about things you can do to prevent it. And then the last one, I always love to include this, is how to clean lead dust, because it talks about what to do for your cars. If you have hardwood floors, carpeted floors, and especially people that live in their homes, essentially, if there's lead in the paint, they can't just move out or like tear down their home. So we have to give them some recommendations. So, not wearing shoes in the home is good, especially little ones are spending time on the floor. What we call wet being, so mopping or using a wet cloth to wipe down the windowsills. If you're just using a broom, you're just putting all that dust back up in here. You want to get it off and just make sure you're doing that regularly.
Can you paint over it? Does that help?
I think, don't quote me 100%, because I know there's also a lot of it that you may know more about it. But yeah, I think as long as it's covered, you're okay. But if you're going to demo that wall, then you have the risk of the old paint underneath coming out. Yeah. So like we talked about, recommendations that we'll provide, if there's any use a wet mop or cloth to pick up the lead dust. Some cards are a big one. We talked about it. If you just keep coming home and after occupational exposure or the shooting range, that dust is going to build up. So we recommend using a vacuum with a HEPA filter. Same thing with carpeted floors. If there's toys, especially if they're on the floor a lot, they get dirty, just making sure that they're rinsed off properly. Always removing shoes or work clothes before entering the home. I would think too, even if you don't change, parents come home, their kids are excited to see them, they run up, you pick up your kid, and now your kid's all up in the lead dust that's on your clothes. And we always want to make sure that we advise everybody, if you have any clothing that may be exposed to lead, wash that separately, literally from everything else, even your own other casual clothing, so that you're not mixing it. We can provide some dietary recommendations, so there's certain foods that can help reduce lead absorption, especially for children. So we'll recommend foods that are high in iron, calcium, and vitamin C. There is this little handout that we can send to people at STOM online, just has a little recipes and snack ideas for the parents. And then lastly, there is a bit of case management. Michelle touched on this. So once children have elevated lead levels from that screening tool, we want to recommend them to get that blood draw to see if we can confirm what that is. If and once that's done, then there is a testing schedule. So again, the higher the level is, the faster we want them to get kind of monitored routinely. Once we start to see that go down, we can kind of space out those tests, less often. We just want to make sure that whatever recommendations we give them are working. And so those are recommendations that we'll give to both the parent and then also the provider. So as a parent, they may forget or whatnot, they don't remember when to go back. So we'll also let the provider know, hey, can you just mark it their next well visit to make sure you get that tested. And our goal is to monitor those blood levels until they get under that threshold of 3.5. So ideally, we like to see that they get 2 of those consecutively. So, because we don't want just to have one and then, they kind of keep doing their activities and then the next one goes right back up. We like to see 2 that are consistently under that level.
What's the average, or is there, Michelle, how high
You average of the level, or
that you end up case managing them to make sure that their lead level goes?
I don't have a good number, because it's just, they kind of come in waves, too,
Okay.
so. So here's some resources. So like I said, there's that lead recall website. I certainly invite everybody to check out there. You never know if you have something in your home. We want to protect adults as well as children. So that, we we follow up on any elevated blood levels, whether it's a child or adult, and then we're kind of focusing on children in today's presentation. Here's our health department website. We also have the EPA, and CDC has actually a lot of great information if you want more examples of exposures that we may not have touched on. They have a really helpful website. And here's our contact information. And the one thing I wanted to mention, so for those of you that are not familiar with we are with the epidemiology program. So what that means is we handle anything that's like a reportable disease. With lead at the health department, it also ties in closely with our environmental health program. So kind of some limitations of what we have to our investigations is that we just can't go out and test everybody's home. And if a child has like even a low level, we have certain protocols. We can only test when it gets to a certain point. With Michelle coming on board, because before we only had one person that did it. So now Michelle's going to get certified and trained. So hopefully that's something that we can expand upon. So just know that we aren't able to do like extensive testing at home. So our kind of focus is identifying what those exposures are, educating parents, and get them retested and make sure that what we're advising them is helping the child. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to open the floor up for discussion, questions. If anything that Becky or Michelle said leads to a question, you can ask it now. I'm also going to just remind you of strategic priorities of the coalition in a minute. Yeah. So if there's anything that triggered questions, go ahead, Larry.
I got here late, so I'm sorry about that. I know that when you buy a house, you have to disclose it. What, did we?
We have a realtor in the room. Yep.
But when you're renting, like, there's a lot of cases, I've been working a lot in Clearwater, in the Mexican community, and they're like very between houses, and like, so-and-so knows somebody in their room. They don't even have a lease, so how would they know if they have, if you're a landlord and you don't disclose let?
Yeah, I think that it's based, I used to be for that time, and into that. So you can always look at the age of your home, even if you're just renting or staying there temporarily, on the property. This idea is home bills, before after. So there's that information. So normally there's just like a routine land disclosure if your home is, before that time period. So it's just a disclosure to say they may not be here, but you don't know. So, and
But landlords don't have to disclose it.
It should, I think it's in the rental agreements as well. It's within that. It's kind of one of those standards and to believe.
And I'm sure Epi doesn't go to that.
Oh, correct.
So
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think you mentioned, it's a specific test you have to request for lead. Like if you go take a basic physical or do blood work, you're not testing for that, or?
Correct. Yes, you mean for like an adult going in and wanting to get their levels tested?
Yeah, or a child. Because you just gave me all the ways lead.
Yeah.
Kids went to the physical, or I just went into it every year. I can run blood work at the beginning of the year, and I just got clean for the health. Like they don't test, but they don't test for lead unless I specifically ask for them to be tested.
So for children, like we kind of touched on earlier, it is more kind of built into their routine recommendations. I believe that it tends to fall off after 2 years. So even if you have a child that maybe tested elevated at close to 2 years or at that mark, obviously we'll case manage to get them down. But just know that for children at least, they're not going to be routinely tested at 3, 4, 5. It kind of falls off because also too, like I mentioned, children of those younger ages spend more time on the floors. They're sticking their fingers in the mouth. Just the age of where they're at, they're more prone to those exposures. So it kind of the routine testing drops off for children after 2. For an adult, yeah, normally it's not going to be just included in like your normal routine annual blood work. So I've seen doctors like if somebody mentioned like, oh, because they'll put in, if you, do you work, are you retired, what's your job? So if you kind of mention something that has risk, then sometimes doctors will talk to them about, hey, let's get you tested for lead to see what your levels are. But unless you kind of mention it or specifically request it, it's not a routine thing.
Go ahead, because I thought Trevor was going to answer the question about the landlord.
Yeah. So I'm saying like we get a lot of one person will have a really high level, and then they'll tell all their friends. And now all their friends are going to get tested, and we get more, but it's like they just didn't know.
Are there indicators, what kind of indicators would trigger it outside of the job occupation being disclosed or something like that? Are there signs or symptoms that would, indicate maybe someone in?
Yeah, unless you have, like, there's no normally any obvious signs or symptoms, especially for children. That's why I think the threshold was lowered, so that we're kind of getting it to the point where people are having like developmental delays and things like that. So you won't necessarily see any signs or symptoms, so those routine screenings are important. Unless you like ingest something and then you're gonna have like severe health issues pretty quickly and people end up in the hospital. Especially for older people, adults, kind of these like ongoing chronic exposures, you generally are not gonna see something very obvious. So that's why like we always advise people to get tested so like you know where you're at. And then we can deal with it from there.
Ms. Joyce?
Yes,
And then I come back.
you just gave a lot of information.
Sorry for the information overload.
Very good information. So my question is, do you all provide this information in a different setting where you can do this type of, like I'm just saying, I work with a lot of families with children.
Mm-hmm.
This is information these particular families need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any opportunity to have you all present this to families if we have them together?
So our goal is, that's kind of why we're here. That's why I kind of wanted to share with you guys, like this is our scope now, because we're more like in a response effort. So once someone's positive and has elevated lead results, then we respond, so we're kind of not in the upfront prevention part of it, because we're just responding based on our protocols. So that's kind of our goals here, like where else can we touch on, what other outreach, Michelle has brought on, so now we have more, support within the health department to kind of expand on our capabilities. So
I was brought on to like have a dedicated person to do these investigations for lead. So I can also, eventually do more outreach and, give this type of education out to the community.
And you're gonna be at the Food Connects Us.
Yeah, this Saturday.
So at Child's Park, right?
Mhm.
Child's Park this Saturday from 11 to 1-ish. There'll actually be a table.
There'll be a Florida Department of Health table. There'll be immunizations out there, giving childhood vaccines. I'll be out there. I believe WIC is going to be out there to give like a demonstration on healthy foods and recipes and things.
And then we'll actually have a couple of people from the coalition who will also be there. So that's one of the things that we're partnering with them, not them, but Michelle and Becky, to share the educational material that they have so that if they're not able to be at a community event, and when we start talking about the strategic plan, these are the kinds of questions I'm hoping you guys will think about. How can we multiply and leverage our efforts? So that's a great question, Ms. Joyce, because we can figure out, maybe there is a way that we can figure out how to do that. Both Elaine and Aaron, who just came in, that's on Aaron who's right here, have been doing some one-on-one community education, and they've gotten themselves up to speed a little bit about it, and so they can also do some of that. I think I'm just now saying that y'all can. Okay, thank you so much. So don't forget that idea when we get to talking about the work.
Okay.
And then Stephanie, yes, go ahead, love.
Two things, and you gave me a great segue for the second thing. The first one was, so it would be a good recommendation for parents to say, to advocate for their child. What was the lead level at those markers that they know?
Right.
And that way, they know if it was run or not.
Yeah, and also, like I mentioned, the American Academy of Pediatrics has their risk assessment, on schedule. And so they'll do the initial risk assessment of like, where do you live? Do you live in certain areas? What's the age of your home? If they, don't pass that, that is when the pediatrician will order the test. If they're okay, then they're not getting tested necessarily. But it's always great for parents to advocate for their kids.
So that if they just simply ask when their kid gets a blood draw, hey, I was wondering, did that include a lead testing?
Yeah.
And that might even instigate a conversation, oh wait, do you think you might need it? And they can have those conversations with their pediatrician.
That's good. Remember that too.
Yeah.
The second thing went right along with the education, community education. So the entire premises of my company is to support social justice advocacy by building communities. So one thing we do is table it as many events as possible, and we simply share resources that we've vetted. So for example, one company we work with is the ACLU. And we have stuff from them. Our tabling is simply to ask, hey, how can we help you? And so that they tell us, you know, I'm undocumented, we hook them up with that resources. So is it possible to get those educational materials to me and my company, so when we're tabling, we see a family with small kids in a wagon, we can stop them and say, hi, you have such a beautiful family. I was wondering, are you in the area? Do you own a home, and how old is it? Oh, let me get you some literature, even if it's just a scan. If they don't want to scan that, but I build that rapport with them, then I can even follow up later and say, hey, remember we met? I just wanted to know if you had any additional questions. So that way we're kind of trying to infiltrate those communities that are less trusting when it comes to governmental agencies.
What languages do you need? Just English, or do you need?
English, Haitian if possible.
Haitian Creole.
Haitian Creole, and then Spanish, of course.
Okay, so between us and, because we also have been identifying materials, and Becky, you checked, right, to make sure to see the stuff that we have at the back is some of the stuff that we have.
No, the ones that we had, that we primarily sent are the ones that were on
Oh,
the
okay.
slide from our website,
Yeah.
that they're available online too.
Yeah.
So I was seeing what you guys.
Yeah, between the two of us, because we have some stuff, there are like boxes of stuff, some of the ones that are in the back, the education material that we can also share with you.
Okay, I'm happy if you just point me in a direction where I can print stuff out, I'm happy to do that, but I'm not gonna lie, if I can get it printed for me, that helps my cost, because I'm getting no money for that.
English, Haitian Creole, and Spanish. Okay, we got you. Any other questions? I would love to see if we have any contractors, Mr. Jensen, just looking, or folks with relationships with landlords talk about that piece. But the one thing I want you to think about, we're going to break for lunch. Thank you so much, ladies. As you're grabbing your lunch, thank you, City of St. Petersburg and the lovely Publix. As you're grabbing your lunch, just start thinking about like what other information, expertise do you want to hear from, and also what other questions come up for you, and we'll talk about that after lunch, okay? All right. Let's eat.